Philip Clement is saying all the right things because he has to about the size of the gap, and he's claiming it's minimal, and that the cup final proved that. And in a way it did. If you took the game in isolation, you can justifiably argue, look, there's not much, there's a penalty kick. But I think anybody who listens too closely to that and who wants to believe it to be true would be in danger of deluding themselves, because the gap is massive. And, I think I mentioned in my column, obviously Celtic have moved on to overtaking Rangers now with 119 major trophies against 118. And, you could look at that again, so just like penalty shootout, there's only one in it, there's nothing much in that. When you actually rewind it to the turn of the century, which is nearly 25 years ago now, Celtic have amassed 51 of those trophies in that period.
It's mad.
Against Rangers 18.
Wow.
Celtic have 18 Premier League
Hang on,
titles.
51 against 18?
Yes.
Wow.
Celtic have got 18 Premier League titles, Premiership titles in that period.
In 24 years?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
So that is, if you want to assess what the gap looks like, that's where you start.
I didn't realise it was that emphatic.
And to that end, it does show you that Philip Clement's in a really hard place. Again, at the weekend there, legs are falling off people. People are falling over in the middle of the pitch. Brendan Rodgers is able to turn to his bench and bring on 2 record signings, £20 million worth.
Yeah.
On you go. Clement turns around, his Dessers and Dowell.
Aye.
And that shows you, so that Rangers have definitely been moving in the right direction over the last 3-4 weeks. And I didn't think that was going to happen, so I give Clement great credit there. But when you actually look at the scale of the job, and and it's structurally from the top down that Rangers need a reboot, and that's why the most important signing of the lot might be Patrick Stewart, because he has to walk into that boardroom and he has to start leading, and he has to start telling the investors who made up the board previously that what you were doing wasn't the way to run a football club. This is the way to run a football club. You've employed me to make these decisions. Now, please sit down, shut up, and let me get on with the job. Because Rangers need to change. They need a change. They need fresh ideas. They need new strategy. They need new energy. They probably need new money. But I think there's a resistance to change. I think some of the guys that are in the boardroom kind of quite like it. They went there well-meaning because they want, and they certainly did a great job in terms of taking Rangers out of harm's way. But the longer that it stagnates, the longer that these guys put their egos, with their brown brogues, then the worse the decision-making and the staler Rangers have become because of it.
Yeah.
So they need freshness. And they need to be prepared to say, do you know what, we like that little bit of power and all that, but we totally understand now we've not been running this right. The trophy count tells you that. We actually need to take a step back and let somebody drive this from the front. And that's what's going to be fascinating. Is Patrick Stewart that guy? Does he feel that he's been given the mandate to go in and start telling them, as opposed to them telling him, and him just being a facilitator? He needs to be the driver.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a kind of radical modernisation. All these things need to happen. And whether it's Philip Clement who's in the dugout or anybody else, until they get that part of the club structure right, then it's just send on the next one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The job is almost impossible to properly cut that gap.
Going back to the trophy count thing you mentioned, I just can't get that out of my head. See, when you think back to the year 2000, Rangers under Dick Advocaat, they'd beaten Celtic, I think it was 21 points that season. People were talking about Celtic are 5 years behind, and Rangers still had big ambitions in Europe.
Which does show that things can turn quickly.
Aye, of course, but imagine you said to a Rangers fan then, see the next 25 years, Celtic are going to almost completely dominate. You wouldn't have believed it, really.
No, well, yeah.
And to put another slant on it as well, this is why I feel uncomfortable seeing Peter Lawwell and people like that at Celtic get a hard time. I mean, what more could they have?
Well, there you're talking about. I mean, I'm talking about the difference in leadership structures at the two clubs. Peter Lawwell is a Premier League chief exec, or was a Premier League style chief exec, and he was up against. I mean, it wasn't a fair fight. and he's been up against
Yeah.
a various collection of kiddie on merchants across the city. It has. It's been easy.
It's just a
I mean, he
fact.
must be laughing up his sleeve.